Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Planning Advisory Committee of November 13th, 2025. An agenda has been circulated. Director, like there's no additions to the agenda? Then they will approve the agenda as circulated. The minutes of Planning Advisory Committee, October 9th, 2025. Were there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, those will be approved as circulated. The next on our agenda is public input or question period. And I'll just read the parameters. Please note public participation is limited to 30 minutes. Each person is limited to 3 minutes and may return to speak once for 1 minute if time permits within the total 30-minute allotment. Questions or comments are to be directed to the chair. Comments and questions that relate to personnel, current or potential litigation issues, or planning issues for which a public hearing has already occurred, but no decision has been made by council will not be answered. I understand there's people in the gallery, so I'll start there. If anyone wishes to speak, please come to the mic and give your name and address if you might. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor McKay. My name is Isabel Madeira Voss. I live at 12 Linden Avenue in Wolfville. I want to address one item that I saw under the Housing Accelerator Fund. First, I want to thank you for this time and to congratulate the town and the staff on an incredible body of work that's been done under the Housing Accelerator Fund, having attended, unfortunately, just one presentation, but clearly through the material that was provided and the material provided for this evening's agenda, you can see how extensively. So I want to congratulate the town and the staff on that work. The point that I want to address today is, I'm sure you've never heard me talk about this, the height change that would take the automatic height from 3 to 4 stories. As we all know, 4 stories are currently permissible, as we can see from the development at 292 Main Street. But that process requires that there is not only approval by council, but that there is a public process. What is being proposed is that it would be automatically by site approval be approved. And that is the point that I have most concerns about, because by making it by site approval and not having a full public process, what this change would mean is that the citizens, the taxpayers then would have absolutely no mechanism for expressing their concerns, their opinions about any proposed development. And that for me, I think is key because it limits significantly, well, it eliminates public participation in terms of how our town develops at that level. And I think it's very important that we retain, that town council retain that control, but also that the citizens of this town who currently live here and pay taxes, not future citizens, but those who will have to live with whatever these changes are, have the opportunity to have their say. And that it doesn't always work, as we know. We have examples of public opportunities where things were expressed and yet it didn't go that way, but that's the way it is. But I think that process of allowing for public engagement is crucial in any democratic society. And I think this would be a significant blow to that. The second has to do really with—
You have about 20 seconds remaining, Isabel.
Okay, well, I won't speak then in detail about the style, but I think the historic core of our town is really defined by the height. Architectural consistency is not really as widespread as it might be in other small towns. And what really defines our core and our downtown, first and foremost, is the height, and that is the one element that I think we should preserve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Isabel. Is there anyone else in the gallery that would like to address BAC? Seeing none, Director Lathley, I know we have some people on Teams. Would they like to speak? Sure. Diane or Martha, would either one of you like to speak? It's Jody.
No, thank you. Just listening.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing from me.
Martha?
Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Great. No one else in the gallery? Great. Moving on, our new business is a presentation on what we heard during the Housing Accelerator Fund implementation planning document review, open houses. Jacob, are you going to walk us through the presentation? Right.
All right. Thank you so much for having myself and my firm back here to help you out. We've been honored throughout the process to be supporting your staff and your council and the community in this work. I had the privilege to be here last month, and I feel a lot more comfortable having met many of you and had the opportunity to talk at the open house to be back here and talking about this. For those who don't know me, I am fairly new to Fathom. I've been there about 3 or 4 months, but I have an extensive career history in municipal planning in the public and private side. So I've worked on both sides of the table, representing developers and representing municipal government and community in their work across Ontario, some international work in the South Caribbean and Nova Scotia. So my name is Jacob Ritchie. I am from Fathom Studio. Tristan Cleveland is here from Happy Cities as well, another consultant who's done extensive work on this project. And we'll both be here through the evening to support your conversation and consideration. So tonight's presentation, I'm briefly going to talk about how we got here, give you a description of the planning documents that you've had an opportunity to become familiar with over the last 4 weeks. We're going to talk a little bit about how feedback shaped the planning documents that are in front of you and are going to continue to shape them as we go forward to council. And then we're going to support the PAC discussion that you're going to have tonight. Let's just minimize this. So tonight, at the end of our conversation, you're going to consider a motion. The motion that's in front of you, drafted by staff, says that PAC recommend to council the implementation of the Housing Accelerator Fund Action Plan and other changes found in the draft planning documents, which are the Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw, subject to further consideration of certain site-specific zoning issues, building height in downtown, RLR and RL zoning, parking requirements, zoning transition areas, mixed-use zone application and regulation, the extents of the downtown zone, and the design guideline and where they may apply. This is a non-exhaustive list of what you may talk about tonight, but it was built based on the conversations that councillors and PAC members have had through the open houses with staff and consultants. So we've put this together as a starting point, but you are expected to add to and delete from this list through your conversation this evening before a final recommendation is voted on and moved. Okay, so just stepping back to 2 years ago when this project started, throughout Canada, many people were experiencing a similar pressure as Wolfville. And what was happening was the need for housing was growing as our population grew after the pandemic. And the production of new housing coincidentally slowed in many jurisdictions as trades became less available, financing changed through the inflationary period, and new government mechanisms for supporting the development of housing were just gaining traction and being developed. So as those things were happening and our housing need continued to grow, the gap between need and supply continued to grow. So municipalities, at the encouragement of the federal government, took action through a series of projects, all titled the Housing Accelerator Fund Project. So you are not the only town in Canada right now considering a raft of changes to your legislation and a consideration of your future driven by this change. But all of it is about readiness. And I think Wolfville should be very proud of the action they've taken, along with all these other municipalities that took up the mantle to say, how can we solve these problems now and in the future? So in overhauling planning documents, we're talking about 3 documents here in town that you guys rely on. You have a municipal planning strategy that enables regulation. That regulation takes the form of a land use bylaw and a series of schedules to that bylaw, one of which is your design guidelines. So you did a full and complete overhaul of these planning documents between 2015 and 2020. At the time, that was a 5-year project to really update and modernize your regulatory framework. A lot of the staff that are with you today and some of the counselors were part of that process, and you know how hard it was to get that lift done. And I think that we're doing a fulsome review again in a 2-year period is pretty impressive and speaks again to how hard your staff have worked on this. So we have drafted with the staff and the community input and the PAC recommended changes to your municipal planning strategy, your land use bylaw, and your design guidelines. This was the first action in the HAF, was to do a plan review. So this action was about reviewing and updating municipal planning documents to align with housing priorities, simplify planning, and accelerate approvals to allow a wider mix of housing types, including gentle density, or what some folks call missing middle. I think it's important to keep this in mind. This is really that small and noble work that we're doing, is really looking at regulations and how they impact the community and saying they should align with our housing priorities, what they may be for a municipality that council has decided. We want to simplify planning so everyone can understand what we're doing, and our bylaws stop being arcane barriers to development and start being supportive documents that everyone can understand. And we want to accelerate approvals to make sure more housing types can happen. And something that I've talked about over the years and still am working to get right is getting that right mix of specificity so you know exactly what you're going to get, and ability for designers, landowners, and really citizens in the community to do what they know is best in their community and give them the free rein to build something that meets the market need that exists, but also fits in well with the character of your community based on their local knowledge. So that's really what I want to keep going back to as we talk about these documents tonight. I'm not going to read every word on this slide because I said I wouldn't when I was outside talking to one of us, but also it's not a great way to present. But at the top line in our municipal planning strategy, we do want to talk about growth management. That's what you're doing in your municipal planning strategy. We have settled on the low growth scenario as the most palatable, based on council direction. That is what the bylaw updates are all about, is getting to that low growth scenario, just to make sure you have enough housing for that. We're talking about infrastructure alignment, investing for success, and making sure that you are putting the investments in the community where you need them. One of the things we heard a lot during the open house was, if we are to grow, let's make sure we're growing in a way and we have the services we need so that the quality of life is maintained or improved for citizens today and citizens tomorrow. We have big updates to mobility and parking policy inside this municipal planning strategy. The land use bylaw has reduced the parking requirements, and there's a new focus on active transportation networks and other systems that can support better mobility in Wolfville, because we have heard traffic as a major concern for your community. And frankly, the communities around your community feel the same way. And then finally, there's new non-market housing policy. This is a framework to support expansion and retention of current non-market housing, but also new ideas like a municipal land bank and a potential granting program. We know affordability is a key issue for Nova Scotians. We know it's a key issue in Wolfville. We want to make sure people can afford to own a home if they want to, and if they choose to rent, that they can afford to rent in a place that is giving them all the amenities they need to have a high quality of life. Your land use bylaw, really near and dear to my heart personally, was the ability to simplify this, going down from 7 residential zones to 4 residential zones. Again, that simplification theme is coming through. We took your 3 commercial zones and created a single downtown zone. It's really a mixed use zone. We're no longer really focused on separating uses in the land use planning, both the academy and the practical world. We want to mix uses because that's what makes your downtown great, is the mix of housing and commercial that has been available there for generations. We have expanded the boundary of downtown into other areas nearby, and we think that'll be something we talk about tonight. We have height and density regulation changes. So that was talked about already in the public comment, and we've talked about it a lot at the public hearing. We had heights frameworks before. We're changing the approvals mechanism, again, in that world of trying to get out of the way, find other ways for folks to invest. and engaging community and really stepping back from those development agreement processes. That's been a big change in our land use bylaw. And again, I mentioned this in the MPS conversation, the reduction of parking minimums. This does not mean parking will not be built in your community. It means it will not be determined by your council, but by the demands of the development that's happening. And the fear when that comes, to be honest, and what we'll talk about tonight, is if you're not making them build parking, are they going to use our streets, their front lawns? What are they going to do for parking? And is that going to make our quality of life worse in our community? So I know that's going to be a present conversation this evening. A little picture here of a much simplified zoning map for Wolfville. I know your eyes are honing in on some particular part of this town and a zoning shade that may be a particular focus of you, your neighbors, and those in your community who you talk to on a day-to-day basis. But we did want to put it up here. Wherever we're doing this work, we want to get down to, again, a simple set of zones that can be readily understood. We've gotten a lot closer to that with this version, and a huge hat tip to staff who've been so instrumental in making the decisions on where these lines should be drawn. Of course, PAC and council ultimately have their chance to talk about that now, and we expect we'll talk about that tonight. In the design guidelines, we did make some changes to go to really protecting that downtown character that was sort of discussed already tonight. Explicit design tools in these design guidelines and being a little more clear on how your design working group is actually functioning with your staff. Your development officers in this town, Mark and Marcia, are doing a great job, but they're going to use this design working group. And when you read these new design guidelines, they've got a little more clarity on how that working group and your staff are working together to approve developments throughout the town. We want to explore the extension of design guidelines, but beyond the traditionally designated areas. So we did hear this a lot at the open house. We heard this from a lot of folks that they like the design guidelines. If we're not going to be having public hearings on everything, let's make sure that we've got some way to get good design on all projects in Wolfville, and having good design be a hallmark of your city going forward. Town, city, I apologize. So what we heard, your staff did a great job. You counselors did a great job. PAC did a great job because a lot of people were engaged in these open houses. Flyers were dropped off at homes throughout the town. You used online and social media to get the word out. And we did have a lot of people coming out, and most people were quite positive to have this time with staff and consultants to talk through the different issues at the boards. It was not a traditional presentation where there were chairs lined up and everyone sat down. We did hear from some members of the public that that is their preferred method of communication. And we did hear from this PAC prior to these that they wanted to make sure that those folks were as satisfied as those who may be willing to engage in an open house. So I hope that everyone who came to that open house had a better experience. Your staff and consultants worked very hard to make the open house a positive experience, and we got a lot of positive feedback through counselor and through staff on the efforts for that engagement. There are a spectrum of opinions and tensions. It is fair to say for everyone who comes and shares an opinion, there is another member of your community who shares the opposite opinion. We are in a difficult space working in public work as counselors, as volunteer members of a planning advisory committee. You are considering a spectrum. People want more, other people want less, right? Do we have enough already? Some of us do, and we're good the way we are. Some of us don't, and we want more opportunity for us in the community. There's a mix. There are people who enjoy modern and contemporary design and would like to see that mixed in with the heritage and some of the eclectic nature of the different periods of design in this town. There's people who want to see more urban characteristics in a small town with a great main street and a huge institution anchoring what you do here. And there's folks who would like it to feel a bit more rural and not lose that feel and the ability to stroll through an apple orchard within town boundaries on a regular basis. We have the parking and no parking argument. And of course, we always have the beautiful and ugly argument. One of our favorite arguments to have: bylaws are a horrible place to try to regulate beauty. That's not how it comes, right? So we're trying to make rules that people can work within. Architects, designers, citizens will create things that are attractive to them, and they may not be attractive to all. We know we're in this place where we are in the middle of the spectrum trying to listen to all opinions, and kudos for taking that role on. And we're here to try to support you through that this evening. So the feedback goes from here to council. Council is going to be taking in best practice as advised by their staff, professional advice from folks like myself and others, public consultation from the open houses, the emails, the letter writing, all of the stuff that council has heard, the strategic priorities, reports, and plans your staff have done in other areas, some of your infrastructure planning, some of your revenue projections, and your fiscal sustainability as a town. Council has to weigh all that while they're weighing everything else. And the idea that they're trying to find something that might be best for all, not for a few. And that, in addition to the PAC feedback they get, is formulating what they're holding in their hands as they make decisions on this through the next few months. So we really obviously appreciate what council's doing. We want to give them the best leg up tonight by giving them clear directions, clear instruction on what they want to be focused on in the next stage. And again, I'm just going to wrap with that same motion. I'm not going to read it again. I appreciate everyone making it through with me as I read from the slide the last time, but this is the motion that's in front of you. We are going to end my presentation, start with a conversation of PAC, and staff and myself will try to record to get the best motion forward for council. All right, with that, I am done. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. So I am going to open it up. So first, I'd like to say thank you to the consultants and staff and to PAC members and council who came out to all of the engagement sessions that we had over the last, whenever that was, 4 sessions. And I know everyone has heard many other concerns throughout their day-to-day life, and we've received emails on them as well. Prior to this, I did send out an email to PAC and asked every member to come prepared with, I mean, we've been through this, at various iterations a few times now, come prepared with, your top 5 things that might be, niggling at you or things that you've heard. And I'm going to ask us counselors to kind of take a back seat and let our advisors from the community tell us. That's one of the benefits of having community members on these, is to tell us what they hear. So I'm going to ask someone to start if they would kick it in, because at the end of this, we would like to take this to council to make sure that that is in their hands. They are going to be the decision makers. We will be the decision makers, and sort of, and we need to move it there. So, but we want the best motion that we can get and with the most consideration from all of you. So we have lots to think about and consider. With that, would anyone like to jump in with their top 5 or at least one, and then we can say, yes, that's it. And if other people want to put a tick mark and say, yes, that was on mine top 5 too, that would be great. I don't want to pick on anyone, but so does anyone want to jump in? I know us counselors are used to jumping in, but so sit on your hands for a second. I won't pick on anyone, but I might. I'm gonna pick on Alan. Just because he said he didn't, he's like, no.
I'm just going to start with one to start. So I have expressed in the past, and I continue to have this feeling that removing the parking minimums entirely is problematic. Wolfville, for better or worse, serves as a service center to outlying areas. We are going to have a lot of transportation and people coming and going. We do want to be able to accommodate them, in particular individuals who may have mobility challenges as well too once they park. So if parking minimums can be shaped around thinking for the people who require access closer, is sort of where I'd like to land.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion on how many, or just leave that to staff or us to make a decision, or? No. Okay, fair enough. Just thought I'd ask. Thank you. Thank you for opening that up, Alan. Appreciate that. And that was on the list of, on the draft motion, correct? Parking? Thank you. Should pull that up. Yep.
I think a couple of points, but one of them that I could start with is site plan approvals. And I guess the way I would summarize it is site site plan approvals are not a panacea. I feel like in our quest to streamline processes, like I've been asking myself, are we really enabling the future Wolfville that we truly desire? And so I looked more into site plans and site plan approvals, and I think Isabel referenced this in her comment as well, is that there'll be a lot more reliance on site plan approvals as we streamline the process. And so what I really hope that we're going to come out with is tools that will enable our development officers to make decisions where we'll see the outcomes that we truly desire. And I'm not sure, when I look around town at some of the recent things that have been approved through site plan, and I preface that with saying it's not a criticism at all of the officer or the developer that is involved. It's just the way things are written. But if I looked at, say, Lot 3 on Pleasant Street, that building there, to me, and I made these points as I talked to Lindsay a bit about it already. It looks completely out of place, what it's going on with setbacks, and that got me into looking into all of this. And we do have a lot of things in our documents that talk about such things. In general requirements under LUB, we have a thing about conforming with existing front yards. And but when I actually read that section, I would ask in particular that section 8.4 for staff to take another look at that, because I found it was quite confusing. It's a may statement as opposed to a shall statement, and I think that is for development officers can create, obviously it creates room to maneuver, but again, is it really what council and citizens want? So there is something there, and we have design guidelines, but if you take Pleasant Street, for example, it's not in the design guideline area. And again, if we have so many things moving to site plan approval, they're not going to be in our downtown area. They're not going to be in our neighborhood design area. And I think we really have to watch that we don't ghettoize other parts of town. And so, that's my concern. Another concern, having been involved with the CCD, and I'm really excited and I'm proud of the plan and what town has come up with for the CCD. But similarly there, as that is becoming a reality, and we had some residents at the open houses be surprised about quadruplexes being built abutting the single family homes on Bishop Avenue. The map that's published shows single family homes on that new street, but quads are being developed. And it was explained to me that this is because they can go up to 4 units. And in fact, through site plan approval, they're doing 4 units. Developers will always, for the most part, they're going to max out their ability. And what's interesting too is that in the MPS, when I read about site plan approvals, they are, from the provincial perspective, to provide greater transparency and clarity for the public. So I think if we're going to do things through site plan approvals, we have to build in another condition there in terms of the town's requirement to communicate in real time. It was explained to me that developers don't have to communicate, they advertise, what's available in the new neighborhood. But again, I think communication. So this all goes to this site plan approval process, and let's make sure that we've got more checks and balances in there if we're going to put that reliance on it. I've got a couple of other things, but I'll just wait for a few
Okay.
other people.
Can I clarify one thing on those, just so I have, so in the list, there was design guidelines, apply them to greater areas of town in certain scale. So would you say that would be sort of how you just determine, like, it's talking about Pleasant and different spaces?
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
that?
I
Okay.
think the team already made a reference to it in the draft motion that maybe we would look at extending the design guidelines perhaps to along some key corridors.
Right.
That might be a way to approach it, or certain types of development, and that would have to go, if it's going to stay site plan approval and not go to a development agreement, like how's that defined? I'm not sure, but
Okay. and devil's in the details on site plans processes. So you're telling me. Okay. Heard you. Thank you. Michael?
I just want to just echo a little bit what Bev said, because that was one of the things on my list, was just around that site plan. And I think site plan approval makes sense to me if you have criteria you're following, and we trust that staff is following through with things. The concern is just around site plan approval for some zones can be up to 120 units, which is big. And I don't have an issue necessarily with site plan being the way to go about it, but I do think there has to be a communication piece. So if you drop in, and I'm going to use a West End example, there's an RH right at the top of Sterling. If you drop in a 120 unit building, I would hope that the people in that area of town would at least be communicated ahead of time. Here's what we're building. It's been approved. Like, I don't think it necessarily have to be consulting them. Is this okay or not? But just an information thing, if nothing else. I think we lose that piece if we, that could be potentially.
So you're at, as part of the site plan process, I'm just trying to see if I can get this in my head. So as part of the site plan process, check-ins back with either council or staff or communication out to the public to make sure that those things are being communicated. that
Yeah,
staff come back.
and I don't have a problem. Like, I think there's a scale there. If it's a quad or a two plat, that to me, that's a small thing, but I think some of these things are, 12 to 120 units are big potential buildings or sites. I just think they probably need community information sharing.
Yeah, some awareness around the
Yeah.
impact that it's going to have on
Yeah.
your social life. Okay.
Yeah, I guess that's my point too. I mean, I think it's the thin edge of the wedge right now. We have some of these newer 6 units, and we know we're going bigger, right? So yeah, the communications requirement and being built in for sure.
Thank you for that.
So, can I just ask a question for clarification?
Sure.
Just on that. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear, that the site plan in all the zones, you would want to have the site plan guidelines tighter for each zone specifically, or just all around?
I'm not sure, Jennifer, if it's tighter, but it's because they're like, when you read them through, they're quite robust. Like when you, and I went and I looked at, say, I did look at Pleasant Street, and I looked at the, what's published and what's been communicated. At least I would think it's there. It's a passive communication. It's just up on the website. But there, for example, in the current criteria anyway, for that building, there is a section that talks about, does the neighboring is it a problem for neighboring properties by way of noise and dust and shadows and all that kind of stuff. But there was nothing in there about being sympathetic to the neighboring structures. But then when I went and I looked further into this, there is actually a general requirement for conformity with existing front yards. And I don't feel that met it, but I don't know if that was there in the current LUB or not. So I don't know if so much as tightening, but it's perhaps more just there has to be something about it has to be followed, that if it says that it's conformity to the front yards, then why do we have a building that's way out in front?
Thank you. Alan, do you want?
Yeah, just a question of clarification and then also a statement. So generally speaking, the use of site plan approval is generally to have some discretion that staff can utilize on a challenging site to meet the intents of the land use bylaw, and to sort of alter those components that are not necessarily fundamental to the development, the location of maybe some fencing, some screening, that sort of thing. So the intent is really to have that flexibility in there. So if you move towards the direction of trying to tighten that up more explicitly and tighter and tighter and tighter, then you're sort of undoing the intent of the actual mechanism. And then you're essentially rolling back into a development agreement process. And so there's a balance there in sort of outlining those things, but you don't want to go too far in one direction, because then you're actually removing the efficacy of the actual tool. The other, just a question of clarification. So around when site plan approval is actually utilized, is the concern that it's adjacent owners that are notified, or is it within a particular radius, or is it the entire community as a whole? So from one end to the other, I think that's actually important to some degree. staff can correct me if I'm wrong, when we do site plan approval, not me, sorry, I'm not involved in this, but there is notification to adjacent landowners. So
Director Lake?
Just speak a little closer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just a little closer to the microphone.
Okay. Yeah. Mostly for Alan. He's the most soft spoken. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Caroline.
In relation to the site plan approval, I think it speaks to what Alan was saying. It, in many ways, we want as of right, if I understand correctly. So we've written the bylaws tight enough so it's very clear to people what they can do. And then, as Alan said, maybe the site plan is the next step if it's not tight enough and they want to do something different. So that's my understanding, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think the point I'm hoping to make is that making sure the details are right in the bylaw. And I think perhaps in the past, that's where we've fallen down. We've maybe been a little bit too quick we've looked at the big picture, but we need to make sure the details are there. I would like to add one thing around the neighborhood design guidelines. When I read them, and I know I don't think I've ever read them before, but I know they changed a lot this time. And for me, it was definitely a light bulb moment. To me, it was like people talk about why they moved to Wolfville. And I felt in many ways the way it's written for the neighborhoods now captures some of that essence. It's about the nature and, you know, how the buildings interact with one another. So I'm glad to see that that's going to be a bit more of a focus. In many ways, I would like to see it as, I'm going to say, foundational to everything. Like, this is where we start. It's not like a layer up. It's like down at the bottom, and I don't know how that's possible. But I do feel that, you know, when we think about all the neighborhood areas, we should be thinking with that lens.
So speaking to the design guidelines, again, being fundamental to the way in which we approach developments. Okay, thank you. Great. I'm going to just go down the list then and see if these things hit the group's discussion points. So in the draft motion, the first one is certain site specific zoning issues or changed may be warranted. So I think that means if there were certain spaces where the lines, for instance, all R2 went to RL. Right. It's hard to go from numbers to letters. So in my head, so from R2 to RL, so it was basically a blanket change. So if there were certain spaces that might need changing, that you would like council to take a look at, not just leaving everything as exactly status quo, but if there were certain specific spaces that we give those consideration. And I know we did receive emails on a few streets for that. So would that be something that you would like us to continue to look at? Yep. Caroline?
Yes, and like some specific ones, but I actually have, I mean, I've thought about it a lot, and when I look at now, the number of zones have been reduced, but there's one that sticks out to me, and I believe there's only one building in the town that's actually being built with this zoning. It was introduced in the 2023 East End assessment. It was a new zone. It's the residential low rise. And what the plan is right now, as I understand it, is that what was R3 will now be lumped with our residential low rise. And when I look at the table, and I think some of it's maybe I need some examples, and I have spoken about it before, but when I think about the town and I think about R3, the existing R3 and the existing R4, it would be better to put those two together as medium density and put the RLR zone with the mixed use. In relation to that, a couple of things. One, when you walk around those two areas in town, most of the buildings, whether it's R3 or R4, are 1 level, 2 level. There are a few 3, and I think I saw 1 4.5-story apartment building. And there's clearly room to add density within those areas without adding height. Whereas if you put the R3 zone with the low rise building, then it's immediately 4, and the density and the capacity and the mass, it allows, as it's written, up to 60 units. Now, I know most of the lots are not that big, but I do want to share the example of the only low rise residential building that's been built. That is on, it's approximately 1 acre, and I don't know whether this has been changed or it's because it's in the East End, but the density on that piece of land is 45 units per acre, which is way above anything else. And that was based on something that was written saying site plan approval for 50 units. And the proposal is now to increase that to 60 units. My suggestion would be, I think I've kind of said it, put R3 and R4 together and allow them to stay as 3. Put RLR with MU. But it would be really helpful perhaps to take a standard lot or a size of lot in the town and compare what's allowed if it was zoned R1, R2, R3, and the different zonings, because visually, and make me a block diagram with all the measurements based as it's laid out in the land use bylaws, so we can see the difference from R1 all the way through. It may not be applicable for some zones, but I'm just concerned that we're pushing density too far.
Okay, so R3 and R4 stay as a 3. You said RLR, switch it to mixed use. RLR is currently R1.
No.
No, I was like, so I was like, RLR.
The symbols are confusing.
Yeah.
The acronyms I find actually really confusing.
So go ahead, Jacob. You want to clarify that? Right. Right.
It is a fortunate closeness of names that will be a problem through this, but when the old RLR goes away.
Okay. That's okay, because that had me, I was like, I don't know that we want to do RLR to mixed use, but okay. But you mean that, not the dash R. Okay, got it.
Excuse
Go ahead,
me,
Clarity.
which one? Yes, clarity, please. Which one did you say that the RLR put together with which one to make an R3?
So
Okay, so.
So
It's in the-
Maybe if you look at, it's
We
in
don't
the
have the old one.
agenda. Or in the agenda package, it's the proposed, zoning, this
Scenario like number,
table.
no, that's new, right?
It's the green and blue one.
Yeah, we changed the names. Probably do like to change the names.
It's this one.
Yeah.
It's
this
just if we look at that one,
Just take-
my, when you go in, if you look at R3 and you look at R4, and maybe it's just because of the way it's written, but as I say, we have one example of, I'm going to say low rise,
Got it.
I'll say low rise. But if you look at R3 and R4, when you go to those areas in town right now, they are much more similar because their origins were at a time when the town only allowed 3 stories, if I understand it correctly. The residential low rise was added in 2023. And the 50 units and the fact that it's in the East End, and I don't know how that is affected by this because the 8.3, where it talked about the East End in the new in the new land use bylaws, it's not there. But that was the table that said in the East End, based on these pieces of land, the owners can develop more greater density, but overall they can't do more than a certain number. So that seems to have disappeared. But we know the developer used that to put a very high density in that zone.
Got it. Okay.
And so I'd like to see that zone either if it could go all together or it doesn't seem to fit with R3 and R4.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarity. No, sorry, I just was confusing the two RLs. Thank you. So I want to go back to that. So look at those. So that would be staying in the draft motion. Building height in downtown was the second item on that draft motion. I'm assuming we would like that to stay as you would like council to consider building height. Not seeing any shakes of head. Yes, you want us to go ahead.
Sorry, just, you want us to indicate whether we want council to think about it?
Yep, that's what the draft motion is. So the draft, this is a draft motion for this advisory committee to take a look at those things and these and any others, or take these off if you wish. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to put the draft motion back up there? If you, thank you. That way everyone can see it.
Right.
So the second thing was, does planning advisory committee want council to consider the building height in downtown? You have your, oh, go ahead. Yes, Jason.
Yeah, I think it has a number of implications. I think at some point it's even up to 5 stories. So quite high. I think there's environmental, parking, heritage considerations that are all going to fall out from that.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Related to that too, maybe it's a good time for me to just mention in terms of I noticed that the public engagement, we didn't actually have a panel on the railway corridor, did we? So we weren't focused on that
not.
piece of work.
It was not on the panel.
Anyway, it's in the plan and
Correct.
we got a first blush look at it in the package that the team provided to us last meeting. but similar in there, and that's an exciting chapter for me as Heritage and Parks person, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I think is exciting, and I know there's much more to come. But the concern I did have with regard to what's there now is that there are 3 to 4 buildings proposed. I think it's behind what's called the President's Field, but they are proposed that we would have up to 3 or 4 buildings there with Acadia that the town would collaborate in. And I noticed they are classified as downtown. And yeah, and when you look at downtown, I believe the LUB says up to 6 stories. And I just wanted to point out and I believe, again, depending on where we are looking at the LUB, that, that's an area where for sure I would suggest council wants to have a development agreement and not a site plan approval, because those 3 or 4 buildings, if they come to fruition, will be very significant in terms of their impact on downtown and on view planes, environment, Harvest Moon Trail, everything. So it just cued me to your point there about the height in downtown.
So height on downtown, and specifically the rail line that we had a quick look at last time.
Yeah, I mean, wherever council lands with deciding on what the height will be in downtown, those 3 to 4 buildings proposed there in that new corridor piece, they could be exciting, but they also could be very concerning if they are not placed and designed in such a way that we respect the environment and that we maintain. There is also another part that I was going to mention about view corridors. So since I'm talking about that, I might as well. There are view corridors in the LUB section 4.5, and I was glad to see those. And there were 2 other view corridors that I wanted to suggest be added, and one of them would be in that new railway corridor amongst those 3 buildings, because that's kind of, as we move west, we sort of lose the view corridors. I know we're not that big, but we have 2 defined view corridors that are in section 5.4 now, that in a little schematic showing along the waterfront. And then of course the one that we have at Reservoir Park out to Bloomington. But I'd suggest 2 more, one at the new rail corridor in that area. And then I was going to suggest as well that town designate another view corridor in the town green space near the rec hub. It is owned by the town, so we might assume, okay, we own it, so we're going to keep it open and it's going to be a view plane. But I think it's good to designate it as such, because the rec hub is there now. There will be landscaping, there will be seasonal kiosks, there will be a lot of things that could happen there that could detract from that view. And I know for a number of us now coming downtown, as we see 292 being built, we can breathe when we look through that space. So I think it should be protected.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Carol, no, okay.
Sorry, I
go ahead.
remember what
Go ahead.
I was going to say now. So in relation to height, Bev's talked about the rail corridor, but I think the other piece that fits with that is particularly the Acadia land behind Alumni Hall, if we're thinking about that area and height in downtown.
Yeah. Okay. So can we add view corridors to the list? Director Lake, thank you. Alan?
This is a non-technical response. So just in terms of height, so one of the things I'm concerned about for the town of Wolfville is if you travel around the province, this is a very successful town. There's investment. You have more park space than really anyone else that I know, quality park space, good transportation, robust tourism, a downtown that doesn't remain empty after something closes. It usually turns over really quickly. That's something most places do not have. If we have to balance off sort of investment and heritage, so there is a definitive characteristic to the downtown and the town generally that is nice. That's why a lot of us like it here. And that's why we also see some investment at the downtown. Now, if we cap height at 4 in the downtown, we may be in a situation where people have to do a significant, I'm stumbling over my words. So if you're in the downtown, you want to maintain the character and heritage feature, that comes at a price. You, to some degree, if you want to see continued investment in the downtown, you have to offset that somehow. If we're going to keep parking requirements, or some of them to some degree, that's an additional cost. You have to go up because you can't go out in the downtown. There's nowhere to go because we want to maintain that character and quality. So capping it at 4, my understanding is once you get to 4, you have to start putting in fire suppression systems, which become very costly as you go up. And realistically, when you walk in the downtown, none of us see what's on past the second story when we're walking around and experiencing that. Past that point, we don't notice it. We see it from the air and we see it from blocks away, but we don't see it when we're experiencing it. We don't notice. That height is more or less hidden. So not necessarily a definitive point on this, but I think if you want to maintain a robust downtown, you have to do some trading off there. I think going up is your only option. So.
Fair point. Thank you.
And I just add,
Yeah.
you know, as we go up, it's a question of how high and how it's done. You know, a number of people said to me at the consultation about how well Hotel Wolfville fits in. So as we add height, if it can be done like that. And I know my initial reaction personally when I was looking at what was shown for the subway parking lot, I was sort of taken aback. But when I looked at it again, it actually steps up if the view is correct in relation to the church that is next door. It would almost be like then, well, you need to build on top of subway to make it look right. So yeah, there is a balance there.
Hearing the word balance a lot. Great, thank you. No, good feedback, thank you. The next on the list was RLR and RL zoning. So I think there was some robust conversations at the open house about that. I'm assuming that will be left on the list for consideration to council. Odds yes. Okay.
Can I just add one example that it's just a very real example that came to me as I was preparing for tonight. So within the last week, 2 properties have gone up for sale in Wolfville. One is in the residential one, R1. It's a 2,800 square foot home, 3 bedrooms. It's on 1.1 acres of land. So as I understand it, that lot would be allowed 1 ancillary building. Same week, a lot has gone up in what is currently R3, 2,000 square foot home on 12,000 square feet. That, without any addition of height, could allow at least 6 homes or 6 dwelling units. So I really do think that we need to think about that. That's all I want to say.
More balance. Got it. Okay, thank you. Great. Parking requirements we talked about. Zoning transitions, where one zone meets the other. Michael?
I guess I just want clarification. So is the issue 2 zones come together and there's going to be a big, like, that it needs to be more of a transition? Is that what people are thinking? And my question then is what happens now because zones butt up against each other now? So is this, you know, how is this a different issue than what we might already have? I don't know. I wasn't sure what that meant.
I think it is an issue that we already have now, and I think the might be that we do it better as we move forward because we are moving. I'll let Director Lake answer that question.
You can go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of different, there's variety in transition. And so sometimes we have commercial up against residential. We're introducing a mixed use zone that abuts residential. There's been a lot of commentary about that. And then there's different types of residential abutting each other. So we're often in this sort of conflict around buffering often and setback requirements. And then that translates into, you know, how big things can be in relation to each other. So, you know, staff put that on there because we heard it quite a bit through the commentary. I think it would safe to say everyone heard that. So we're having it here because we think it needs to be unpacked a bit more, at least to be understood. We have existing requirements. Maybe we need to make them more stringent, or maybe we need to go the other way.
Okay. Would everyone agree that those things should be considered? Okay. Yes? No, look for agreement. Yes, Bev?
I was just gonna say, again, it's the devil's in the details, because I'm
Yeah.
just looking like, you know, RL, there's a number of areas where we talk about permitted with conditions. So
Mhm.
council would want to make sure that there's some conditions. So when you're in that transitional zone, that when we're looking at it, a condition twigs it, that perhaps it needs to go for more approval. I don't know.
Caroline?
And maybe it's not always side by side, but across the street.
Back to that social impact that we've been talking about along the way, right? Okay. Thank you. Mixed use zone application and regulation. Dr. Like, do you want to give us a refresher on that one?
So in the current land use bylaw, we have the C2 zone, which essentially encapsulates businesses that aren't in the downtown. So a lot of those are the inns in town, and then we have a commercial use up on Pleasant Street. We also introduced a mixed use zone in the East End zoning. So a lot of this is trying to simplify into one zone that has similar characteristics. The challenge with this is some of these are existing businesses, like nursing homes, B&Bs, that do have existing development rights to expand their business. Then we have greenfield sites within that zone that could create new buildings. I think that's not as likely given the sites that we have zoned. So it's mostly an existing use expansion issue. So we heard a lot about this. We heard a lot about one particular case of this, and we have this here just because it is taking multiple zones, putting it into one, and making sure everyone understands what the intent is.
Given that we heard that a fair amount at the open houses, is PAC in agreement that should stay to council? Thank you. The extensive downtown zones, because that was expanded from C1s to the DT and moved out. Yeah, Alan.
Yeah, I feel we can strike this off. I think what's been presented consistently over time has been relatively the same, and I don't think it's that dramatic of a change, and also allows some space for some additional commercial use in the downtown. So I'm actually not sure what the issue is. So.
Councillor Elliott?
Just to respond to that, if I may. One thing I heard loud and clear was that the commercial zone should not go up Gaspereau Avenue, should not go above Acadia, or maybe not above even Summer. That was what the residents of that area were saying. So I have to pass that on.
So,
Oh, go ahead, Caroline.
so I think I need some clarification around based on those 2 points just already made, the introduction of, I'm going to call it the neighborhood commercial overlay, because that goes all the way up Gaspereau. But maybe we need to make sure it all makes sense or fits together, or maybe that would accommodate it. If my understanding is that the neighborhood commercial would happen in existing buildings.
Go ahead, Jacob. Thank you. Sure.
These are two different things. The downtown zone expanding up Gaspereau. We do have a schedule over those areas to limit the risk of significant change or the feeling that these will become solely commercial buildings, but it allows commercial opportunity due to proximity to downtown. The neighborhood commercial being broadly applied on transportation corridors is trying to get new commercial uses in existing buildings or in new buildings, but limited in size. So in the neighborhood commercial, we've really limited that use to a certain square footage. And it's trying to get it closer to the residential areas so that you don't have to go downtown for every commercial experience. So it's really local commercial. So they're similar in that they're both regulating and allowing more commercial uses in something that is currently understood to be a residential space. One of them because of the proximity to downtown along Gaspereau, and providing more opportunities for those buildings if they were not to retain residential. The other one is a commercial use in a residential area. They'll always maintain the residential character. They won't ever wholly become commercial spaces. It's allowing a little bit of commercial in a lot of different residential spaces. But there is, with the downtown zone on Gaspereau, the opportunity that some of those properties would turn over to commercial uses, but they won't have the incentivization that the downtown zone has for scale and mass to see those buildings change over, right? So unlike the downtown zone that is not under that schedule that's along Gaspereau, where we do want to see larger buildings and new commercial opportunity. And again, back to balance, that's taking advantage of your great downtown, getting more commercial square footage to increase your tax revenue, and create more opportunities for commercial growth. Those smaller buildings on Gaspereau are not part of that wholesale incentivization. They're more of an understanding that they may have a more commercial character because of that proximity. But I think the point of the member that there is feedback that may not be welcome is worth discussion.
Yeah.
I just want to say there's commercial uses up that street now,
Mhm.
and they have been since I've been here since 2009. So I don't see what the issue is. So
And we can take, and if we take it off the list, it does not mean that a councillor cannot bring it up. Right, so. Or there won't be new ones added when we get to the table then either. So is PAC comfortable with the way the downtown zone is right now on the map? Okay. So nods, okay, then I'm gonna take that one off for now, Devin. Dr. Lake, sorry. We can still consider it at any point in time. The last one on this list anyway is design guidelines that apply, which we talked about, that would extend to the other areas of town, especially our main corridors. Do we have consensus on that one as well? That would like to stay? So I'm assuming that means up like places like Gaspereau, Highland, Pleasant, or the things that we travel frequently. Just to name a few. I mean, could be others. Yep. Okay. That is the list that was presented from feedback from what staff and we heard at the Accelerator Fund open houses. Are there other things that were on your list that aren't represented in this draft motion?
As your heritage rep,
Yes.
I'll speak to that, and whether it's part of this list, maybe I'm not sure. But I did find, looking through the recent documents, that there's good, but it's a bit thin, but there's good references to heritage. I'm concerned, however, about the implementation approach to heritage in town. Specifically in the references, For example, in the MPS section 1.3, community past and present, it refers to town history. Section 3.4 refers to cultural and built heritage. Section 9.4 refers to built heritage. If I can take a moment to talk about heritage, the term heritage can take two forms that are both distinct but intrinsically entwined. They are cultural heritage and built heritage. Cultural refers to intangible assets of heritage, such as tradition, storytelling, and aspects that inform people's cultural identities and lives. Built heritage refers to historically significant infrastructure and tangible assets that contribute to the story of place, time, people, and community. You guys have often heard me talk about essence of place. And so I wonder if, I'm not sure if it's, I think there's an opportunity, since we're overhauling and doing a final edit on these, that we add a definition of heritage. Because in the definitions section, even within the LUB, we don't define historic sites. And yet we list historic sites next to public washrooms in an everything list at the bottom of the neighborhood land use table. So it's there, but it's thin, team. And I think I'm really glad. I know that council and PAC we've talked about hopefully finding the resources through this process as a next step to do an integrated heritage plan. So, so my current concern is really around implementation. The current documents still refer to a heritage committee, but we know there hasn't been one for a few years. Council may want to consider reinstating some type of a heritage committee. And I believe it should be both natural and cultural. And I think that makes it an exciting type of committee for citizens, because you're not only talking about your history and your built heritage, but you're also talking about your parks and your green spaces. And I'm speaking from my federal background, because the Government of Canada, Parks Canada, we manage both. Like, we have historic sites, we have national parks, and it really is a governance structure that can work well. So to consider reinstating a heritage committee, and perhaps to ask the CAO to look into the possibility of resourcing a heritage, cultural and natural heritage advisor somewhere in town, either within the planning unit or maybe as a pilot position, or perhaps something that could be looked at as part of this, at least having somebody on for a period of time to do the plan and to sort of bring a bit more depth and weight to the way we talk about heritage in town and in these documents.
Great.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. So aside from design guidelines that applying to other parks, can we add in those brackets, if everyone agrees, beefing up the heritage and the cultural aspects of what that looks like? Director Lake? Need more batteries. I didn't either. We're going to cut his batteries no more often. We go back through a lot of these. Batteries go so fast. Yeah. No, they're both there.
This
Oh,
one's
there we go.
working now.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
I certainly think we can have more discussion about heritage implementation. Absolutely. And I mean, that's why we have a recommendation or a policy statement in the municipal planning strategy to look at heritage in more detail. I think a lot of that that was just eloquently spoken there about heritage. I think that is almost the scope of work of the heritage piece of work that we're talking about. So I think it's hard to sort of thread it into the policy or the land use bylaw necessarily without some of that work happening. But we can talk more about that. And just a point of clarification, this committee is also the Heritage Committee. So you're talking about a separate.
Yeah, I mean,
committee,
I'm
okay.
aware of that, but I think given that we're going to, and again, as I said, I'm not sure if it makes it part of the motion, but you're trying to get our final comments, Jody.
Yeah.
I think if we're going to be moving toward hopefully resourcing a heritage strategy and that, and looking at this in a more holistic way, then having one person on this committee dealing with it is probably, on a volunteer basis, is not going to be sufficient for what the town needs. That's my sense anyway. And I mean, I think just even like I did, was flippant about it, but the neighborhood land use guide to list historic sites next to public washrooms, that's not the way it needs to be described. But just since I'm on that, public washrooms, again, this is my parks operational thing. There's no definition of public washrooms in the LUB. And as we know, that could be a royal flush or a honey pot, or it could be an environmental pit privy. So I'd suggest we have a definition of it, because I noticed that public washrooms are allowed as of right everywhere, but we don't define it. And some of us have had, royal flushes out when we've been getting renovations at our house, and we have comments about them. So just, again, the devil's in the details. I don't think that's for the draft motion, but, and playgrounds are also not defined, and playgrounds can be big, small. So just again, since we're editing.
Thank you, Beth. Caroline.
In the land use bylaw, and I think maybe it's worth conversation, because is something in most zones, there's the ability to, I'm going to call it upzoning. So request to go to a higher density or a different type of land use. And based on the conversations that we've heard and the feedback that we've got, and the fact that it's not allowed in our
RLR.
yeah, in basically R1, but other zones that potentially are going to be increased and still have the ability, and we know it happened last time when the RMDU zone was approved, that maybe we want to think about that's something, whether it's across the board, I don't know what it is, but maybe we don't need it right now. Maybe that's something that gets visited in 5 years' time, or, in an administrative update or something. But I think that should be discussed at council. I'd like to ask that that happen.
I'm glad you raised that, Carolyn, because that was one other point that I had was, and I think it came up during some of our discussions at the public engagement. And I noticed that, and when I looked at it, and the cross reference with the MPS, so that if in any of these sections, if the development officer wanted to move up, right, to take it from RL to medium use or go up a next level, they have to go to the MPS, and there's a section called compatibility of the development. And when I read through that, it was quite robust. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's good if we're following that. But and I'm not saying that we wouldn't be, but to Carolyn's point, it is on every zone, every new zone except RL restricted. And council might want to consider taking off that enabler on one or two of the other zones, because it is going to really, it's, as I said, it's quite robust the way it's written under compatibility, but it'll be a challenge.
Could change the face of a neighborhood. Yeah. Go ahead, Jacob.
this is one of the processes where council is still very involved. So when we talk about rezonings, one of the things that should give you comfort as a PAC, based on your earlier comments about wanting that discretionary conversation, is that a rezoning is not done by the development officer. It is done by the council. And the tool we're giving your council is that robust set of guidelines in the MPS. So your staff will come to you with a report and say, this rezoning has been applied for. Here's what we think based on da, 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 da. And then council will have an open and public discussion about any rezoning.
Okay, that
Makes you
gives
feel
me,
better.
gives me a lot of comfort. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jason. Yeah, Jason.
Just a further comment, I'm not sure exactly where this should land, but I have an ongoing concern, just about infrastructure in general with new plans and so forth. As you may know, I live on Highland, and in the 3 short years since I've moved here, the crosswalk has been upgraded and is bigger and brighter, and the streetlights have been upgraded to the point where the solar lights around my house don't go on anymore because the lights are so bright. And we were successful in having one of the lights turned so that it's not actually shining in our windows. But the other offending light is, we were told, is Acadia's. And so I have to go after them to see if they can do something about the light. But at the time I was thinking, like, who is it who decides that these, like, this is an improvement? Like this seems like lighting appropriate to, you know, a highway exchange, not a residential neighborhood. And I was looking at the plans for the what's it called? Harvest Moon Trail through town. And I know that was all decided before a while back. But, you know, my thought was, you know, they've kind of infrastructured the heck out of it, you know, it's just, I think and it probably has something to do with the heritage of the town, as you were describing it, that if we, you know, if everything becomes concrete and lit at night and you know, and made completely safe, I think it's going to start to undermine the quality of life in the town. I don't really know how to say this, because I know that planners, that's what they want. They say infrastructure, this is my job, this is what I do, or there's bylaws or regulations. But I think I don't know exactly how to say it, but I think you can take those kind of things too far and start to, you know, kill the goose that laid the golden egg. And the quality of the town is that it's almost rural, and it's and not over orchestrated. I think that's my thought as well as I can put it.
Thank you, Jason. Sorry, Alan, yes.
I want to echo the last point. Light pollution is real and it's a pain in the ass. And it would be nice if we could have some better design guidelines around how light pollution actually functions in this town, because it stinks. That was not my main comment. Can we pull up the map for that show the RLR, the RL, the RM, the RH, and the MU? Was that possible? I just the
zoning.
The map. There we go. Okay, so which one is the RLR? RLR.
RLR is the darker purple,
Dark purple.
not the darkest purple. The middle purple.
Good purple. Okay, dark purple. Okay, so I'm just looking at the sort of conditional, the asterisks associated with the as of right for RLR. And so it says, second unit must be either an internal conversion to add 1 unit or a detached backyard accessory dwelling unit, provided it meets the conditions of the land use bylaw. Now, I understand concerns around people living in your backyard, et cetera, and we all want to have our space. I'm just questioning the rationale of saying, you know, you can have a building, and because that's what an internal conversion would be, you don't actually change the building structure. You're just adding one more person. Our household size has gone down dramatically since ongoing since 1981. You're just adding one more person. You're not changing the building. Just allow them to also have a backyard unit at the same time. You're not actually changing that much. So what I would like to see in that asterisk is and, not an or. So again, most of those lots that have been designated that are significantly larger than some of the other ones that have higher density as well too. So I don't actually see necessarily the issue there. So, and please.
And that is noted in the draft motion under, council would consider RLR and RL zoning in whatever form that shakes out to be. Right? Councillor Elliott? But point taken. Thank you for that.
I just have to add an addendum to what Jason said, because it was so poignant. I immediately thought of chimney swifts. And we don't know if the lighting there is what sent them away, but that was a very vibrant part of Wolfville and is no longer in terms of bird life. We do have cormorants though.
Director, like, I don't know if that's part of this motion in particular, but would you take, I guess we'll take that under advisement and look at it from a different perspective, or,
Lighting requirements?
yeah, light pollution, yeah. Well, I guess lighting requirements, if you're looking at buildings, have to be compatible with your neighbors, but in terms of light pollution itself, that would be a different, because they're already there. So would that be something separate?
We can certainly explain what is in the land use bylaw now when we bring it back. I think we can register the concern and
Okay.
bring it back to you. I think it's totally fair.
Okay.
And some of it is not in our control.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably part of the explanation, but some of it is.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into detail, but this is just building on sort of what Alan said for clarification, just so the committee knows, as we were talking about the the recommendation for council to look at RL and RL zoning. Can you give an example right now when you have R2 and RLD4? Where's RLD4 right now currently in Wolfville? Just on the map. Just so people get the idea, those were a lot of comments that I heard, and I just want people, like everybody sitting around the table, so they know on this map where it is.
So similar to what Member Howell had asked, the lighter purple is the RL, and that is mostly.
I'm talking about the old, if you go to the old map, we have two.
I was just gonna say that RL is mostly made up of the old R2. So on this map that's on the screen right now, the lightest purple is mostly R2 zoning.
I understand that.
Okay.
But I'm asking, we know if we go to the old, we haven't passed anything yet. We're going to the old one. So we know what R1 is now. We know what R2 is. You're asking R2 and RLD4 to combine to RL. Where is RLD4 in town?
It's only the area in the east end.
It's the new zone in 2023.
It's a very small area.
That's what I had a lot of questions on. So I just wanted council to be sure that that is not like the R2. So it is a very new zone. So just as we're looking at it, that's all.
But you know that it has the capacity to go up to 4. And I think that that's the longer term impact, is that we have RL now, like in areas where it used to be capped at 2, and it could go to 4, and developers will go to 4, I think.
So that is going to be something that council needs to consider in that point, and that's why I said, and how it shakes out in every part of that discussion is RLR and R. No, Yeah, RLR and RL.
Yeah.
I like numbers better. I really do. Finance background, like numbers. Yeah. So, again, that was part of that motion, so thank you. Yep. For council's awareness. PAC's awareness for council, thank you. The online, I think, wanted to see that map. I'm not sure if we're sharing our screen or not. Okay, they couldn't see it. So online, they are not sharing this, it can't be shared with them. I think they're having a hard time following along if they can't see the map. Maybe that's it.
I mean, we could share, the point is kind of already
Okay.
passed, but.
And for those online, you might be able to see it on if you go to the website, it is part of the package on PAC.
The screen is now being shared.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Yep, go
To
ahead.
get on that motion list, site plan approval. That again, we want to go back to council and just say, make sure you're comfortable with the criteria and the process for site plan approval.
Yeah.
Because it's so broadly used in the new regime.
So Director Lake, are you going to be adding to are you going to edit that draft motion, or am I going to draft it up as I move along here? So you have it with site plan approval,
Site plan approval,
corridors.
lighting, heritage, views. Those are the main ones we have.
Yep. So the list
I could type it.
that would be wonderful and put it on the screen. And then I just want to make sure we capture the thoughts of PAC succinctly so that council has a clear and concise thought process from this table.
Did I miss anything?
So site plan process. New corridors.
Yes,
We were
sorry.
going to take out downtown. I get mine. Heritage. Oh, I lost there. It was heritage. Yep. Okay. I don't know if you wanted some of the editing on definitions, make sure our definitions were updated, or is that just an editing process that you'll go through? That's okay.
We have notes on,
Perfect.
I think my opinion would just be capture some broad categories. We have this recorded and
Yeah.
and I have notes. I assume everyone else does.
Is that in broad strokes? I mean, we have 4 counselors here now too listening, and it's going to be recorded so we can see it again. Go ahead, Alan.
I just had a question, and this is possibly more for staff. So is the motion as drafted, the intent is to take these matters back to council for consideration as part of meeting the Housing Accelerator Fund? Okay. When is the actual amended document required to be passed, which includes provincial review at the same time?
You can give the dates.
So we met with CMHC. We're looking to have 1, maybe 2 meetings with council in December. And at that point, I think we'll have direction to then amend the documents. Realistically, with a public hearing and adoption process plus going to the province, I think we're into February at the earliest. Yeah, and we've communicated that with the funder.
Okay, and so you're confident that you can meet that with more fulsome discussion of all of these with council?
So certainly the intent of staff is to bring this recommendation from PAC and highlight these with council. There may be more items that council wants more information on. And so at this point, we're at the will of council. And so if they would like more information, multiple meetings, that's absolutely up to council, and staff will support them in getting this over the line.
Yeah, I think the point I'm very roundaboutly trying to get to is this is a lot.
Mhm.
This is actually a lot, and this is covers a lot of the town and the heritage component in particular. The view corridors require fulsome discussion and analysis, and you're not necessarily on an expedited timeline at this point. So my professional opinion is maybe flagging those things at this point, but revisiting them and not including them in this revision period. Coming back to them when you can actually give them the attention and time that they really truly deserve. So
I guess I would add the other thing that comes to mind, as you mentioned, is the deadlines. And I guess if I could have one final piece of advice, and it's kind of motherhood, it sounds like I'm here, but I would encourage mayor and council to take the time to get it right and to not be afraid to say no on certain things. And Devon, obviously you have a good relationship with CMHC. I recall early on at the beginning of this process, they extended deadlines to get applications in. I'm sure we're not the only municipality trying to do all of this on such a compressed deadline. It is a huge change. So take the time you need. If staff need to go back to the federal and provincial government and say, Wolfville wants another 6 months, go for it.
Caroline?
I would like to add to that. I had written that down, and as I was going through stuff, it was, okay, well, we've got the Accelerate Fund action plan, and we've got the bylaws, and I wasn't quite sure, and the municipal strategy, like what we were doing today. And but when I look at the municipal planning strategy, there's some chunks in there that we know, as I understand it, haven't even been changed yet, like the recreation piece, the whole mobility section. And then when we think about the action plan, like the Acadia piece, it came very late. Again, it's time for that discussion, the whole, parking and transit. I really echo that if there's some way, I mean, when I look at the document from the Housing Accelerator Fund that was signed initially, you can see the progress that has been made. It's not like we're not trying, but I do think to try and push some of it through too quickly would be a concern.
Go ahead, Al.
I'm it's because I live in this world a little bit. So the Housing Accelerator Fund applicants in Nova Scotia, you have some that have finished several months ago, all their initiatives, and you have some that haven't started. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation is asking for money back. They are in that stage of this period. And so delays are problematic. They've expressed that to a number of applicants. And so again, these are all really great components, but a number of municipalities that have been delayed for a variety of reasons are taking a more surgical approach to this. What's the absolute bare minimum we need to do to actually hit what CMHC is required? But there's been a lot of considerable work done that you can revisit at a later date where you have more time to think about it. So
I'm just going to speak a smidgen for at least myself and council. I'd like to say that I don't think any of us are coming into this blind. We've been along this ride with you all around the table from the beginning. Staff has kept us up to date. Councillor Williams is in the gallery. We've been keeping up succinct with all of this all along. We've been at every single engagement session. I think we have a fairly good understanding of what's in front of us. I don't think we will be rushed into making any decision that we're not ready to, and we wouldn't push that back, and I think our staff know that. And it is also a living document, so we've said this all along, that if things need to change as we go along, we will do that too. So I think I have confidence in our council that we will take the time we need and give the discussion its full course. Any councillors can speak up or agree or disagree, but I think that looks okay. Yeah. Caroline.
I just, and I'm not sure this is the right place, but it's part of the documents. And I've also been on the non-market housing strategy group. And it is mentioned, I know, as I understand, it is in your strategic plan. I think I saw non-market housing in there. But one, I really want to make sure that with this work, we do get there on that, because a lot of people, I believe, were of the impression when we started this process that we were going to make a difference to non-market housing in the town, recognizing that one of the things that was said was that after the first 2 years of the money, that there would be a good idea of how much money would go into the grant fund. And I think, I'm not quite sure where we're at the funding. We don't know how much is going to be left there. But to actually see some non-market housing at the approved at the end of this process, I think is really important.
Thank you. If we think we have an exhaustive list, or at least from this table, again, not that council can't change or add more on when the time comes, but would anyone like to put this draft motion on the table?
So Carol,
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure it's the right place. Someone else. I mean, it is mentioned. Certainly, the work we had done is not all in one place. There, you know, and Lindsay's not here to.
She's at the back.
Explain. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I didn't see you there. Maybe Lindsay could speak to it if I'm. Yeah, but there's a difference with what we were required to do, and maybe we've done what we're required to do, but when you look at the Housing Accelerator Fund, what we committed to and the grant funding, like maybe you can, how we do it.
Dr. Like?
Yeah, so we've met the half requirement around creating a non-market housing strategy that really is elevated up at the policy level to the municipal plan. We have limited control around whether non-market housing will actually get built. There is some mechanism, and Jacob actually mentioned both of those, which is a land bank and a grant program to try to accelerate that type of housing. I think the question for the committee, though, is if you think that is an issue that you want council to give further consideration to, it's fair game. Certainly from my perspective, to add it to this list, and some of that might come in the form of just further explanation on where we landed, and then council can decide whether the dials are turned up or down or sideways on some of these things.
So do I see an agreement to add non-market housing onto that draft motion list?
Yes, please.
Agreement? Great. We add that to the list?
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe?
Again, yeah.
Okay. Well, you can type it in there.
Just confirming, should I delete the yellow one?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that was the Will of the committee? Thank you. Yes, Michael? I am looking for someone to move that motion if they would read it into public record, please. Yes, please.
I'm going to read from my, then I'll go back
Sure.
up there. Okay, the draft motion is that PAC recommend to council the implementation of the Housing Accelerator Fund Action Plan and other changes found in the draft planning documents, municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw, subject to the further consideration of certain site-specific zoning issues where changes may be warranted, building height in the downtown, RLR and RL zoning, parking requirements, zoning transition areas, mixed-use zone application and regulation, design guidelines, heritage, site plan approval, lighting, view corridors, and non-market housing.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Alan, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, PAC, for that really great discussion. Yeah, very, very, very thorough. Thank you. I know it's a lot of work and a lot of technical documents to get through, and I know council really appreciates your feedback. Thank you. On my agenda. Yeah. So, the next on the agenda is roundtable, but I feel like we've done that fairly well. So our next meeting will be on December the 11th, 2025, 6:30 to 8:30. And our meeting, our business is concluded, so meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
So this is now done for us.
I think it's done for us, yes. We've moved it on to council. Oh my God.
What are we gonna talk about
I
now?
don't
What
know. Yeah, well, I'm done after, this is my second last meeting, so, yeah, but you guys